So today we're moving some plumbing in our bathroom, and unfortunately it's in a concrete subfloor. So we have gone to rent a jackhammer, and that's what you hear in the background there, kind of rattling around. And we are hoping that this thing is going to be able to help us get the job done. So if you've ever considered doing something like this, this is probably the video to watch, because we're going to kind of figure it out with you. Okay, so this is kind of the plan and the idea. We've got a vanity that is sitting here, a toilet that is going to go here, and a shower that's going to go here across this entire wall. We had to figure out our distances here, just for references. Everything that we could see, a toilet needs to set from the wall, from the backside to kind of where the rough end is about 12 inches, and that's from the finished wall. So we're doing drywall, and we've also got some tile here, so we got to take that into consideration. But 12 inches is where it needs to sit from to the center of that flange for the toilet flange. And then it's recommended a minimum of 15 inches from the center to whatever is going to be beside it. So in this case, a vanity, they recommend more like 18. So we've kind of met in the middle at about 17 and a quarter. So that's where we're at with this. So the plan is, this is the old toilet flange here, and we're basically going to try to cut all this out over to there and pull this guy back. Our drain already goes this way, I'm fairly certain. So we hopefully will be able to just take this and turn it back out without having to do a lot of work there. So we've got this thing exposed, and we're kind of ready at a point where we're thinking about cutting this off and turning this up. In the process of doing that jackhammering, we did find out a couple of things. First of all, I figured out that thing's super heavy, and so make sure that you're really up and up for the challenge, because that thing is not for the faint of heart. The other thing is that we thought we had a regular old, just a concrete slab. Turns out we believe we have a post-tension slab, and thankfully we didn't break anything or hurt anything. And so we actually exposed the cable in the process of doing this, and that's at least what we believe that it is. So once we kind of figured that out, kind of switched away from the jackhammer around that, went to the rotary hammer drill, and just kind of very carefully just kind of getting that around that as easy as we could, and then just kind of left it alone once we got past it. The plan is now is that we're just going to go ahead and turn this thing up. We're going to get the flange and stuff, all that stuff ready to go. The only thing that we got to worry about is that, if you remember in our previous video when we talked about this, they scabbed onto this wall because they messed up the piping here. And so what ended up happening was they had to bring the wall out another 1.5 inches. And so when they did, it put the toilet too close to the wall. And that explains why this toilet has always been messed up. So now we're going to have to do probably what they call an offset flange to be able to turn. When we turn this, we're going to offset it back 1.5 inches back this direction, get that thing set in the right space. Now, we didn't end up having to use a offset flange on this. Instead, what we're going to do is we're just going to use this 22.5-degree elbow that you see here laying on the workbench. And that's actually going to kick it out just enough to get us that 1.5 inches that we're needing. And then from there, we're going to attach this 90 that I'm holding, and that will turn up and come up. And basically, before I do this, I'm just installing, and I'm using this purple primer here. This stuff is super thin, so it kind of makes a little bit of a mess, but you want to put this on both sides. So I'm going to put this on the 90, and then I will also go ahead and put it on this elbow. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the PVC glue. I will install that, and I will put that glue on. That stuff, you're going to want to put it on fairly liberally, but obviously not so crazy. It's just like, it can't dry. But you want to put quite a bit on there, and don't be afraid to kind of make sure you get it everywhere, and then make this connection. I'm just doing it here on the workbench because it's a little bit easier to work with, and I know exactly how I want to turn this. So I'm just going to basically set this up, get it how I want it, and put this thing together. Okay, so now that we've got this kind of exposed where we can get to it, what I've done is I've gone and underneath here I've dug plumb up underneath here so that I can get to both sides. So this is completely ready to be cut off. And as you can see right here, there's actually another water pipe that's running right there. So when you're doing this stuff, I mean, it would be nice to just grab a jackhammer and just go bananas, but you really got to go slow here just because you never know for sure what you're going to find. So the next thing we want to do is get our rough end measurements here. So we want to remember that 12 inches is kind of the magic number off of the wall. And in this case, we're also going to add about an inch because we've got to account for drywall and tile that is going to be on this wall as well. Then we're going to check our side-to-side measurements, and that is running about 17 1/4, 17 1/2 each direction, giving us about a 34 or 35 inch space. After that, we're going to go ahead and grab the primer, and we're going to start priming this and put the glue on it. And once you do this, you got to be ready because you're really committed. It doesn't take very long for this to set up. So grab your tape measure, make sure everything is ready to go, and get it all in place. Check your measurements and make sure that you're good to go. The other thing to remember too is that for some reason this will try to push out. I don't know if it's a reaction with the glue or what, but you want to make sure that you hold this thing in and don't let it push out. So at the beginning of the video I mentioned that you're going to be kind of learning along with us, and we've kind of made a little bit of a mistake. So I cut this off as you saw earlier, and I ended up we pulled that old out. When we did that, we realized that on the elbow that came up was actually not a 3-inch to 3-inch elbow. It was a 3-inch, and then it turned, and as it came up and went vertical, it went to a 4-inch elbow. If we had a 4-inch pipe here, you could then take this flange and just sit it down inside the 4-inch pipe. I've seen a lot of stuff online where people just take this thing and they literally just bring cement right up against this thing. But I've talked to a plumber about this, and he said this is supposed to set on top of the finished floor. We don't have a finished floor in here yet. So basically what we want to create is we want to create a space and a spot to put this flange in after the floor is done. So if you're looking at this and you're trying to figure out if that's a coupler that's down there in the concrete, you'd actually be correct. That is what that is. That is a coupler. And what I'm doing here is, because of the fact that the flange that I'm using has to go over the pipe, I need that to go down into the concrete. And so what I did was I took this coupler and I sprayed some Pam on it, like from the kitchen, and on the outside and on the inside, and then I slid it down over the pipe. And the plan is to go ahead and to keep this thing in place until the concrete starts to set up. So periodically I'm going to come out and I'm going to twist this coupler and keep it kind of moving so that it doesn't set up in the concrete. And then eventually I will pull this loose and I will have a gap all the way around that I can drop my flange down on top of. Okay, so this has all set up, and here's kind of the idea behind this coupler. Okay, I've already kind of loosened that up and brought it up, but essentially we'll cut this off obviously, but now I have a gap in here that my flange can slide down and go onto, if that makes sense, because this and the inside of this flange are the same size. So that's kind of the idea, is that hopefully this will just drop down in there and fit perfect. So this is where we're leaving things for now. I've tried to go into detail on this as much as I can, but also not get too bogged down to where it's boring. So if you've got questions, leave them in the comments below. I'd be glad to help you in any way that I can.